The 2025 Detroit Baseball Dinner took place on January 25th at Andiamo's Riverfront in downtown Detroit. The evening featured a Q&A session with current Tiger reliever Tyler Holton, former Tigers pitcher and current broadcaster Dan Petry, and former front office executive Mike Smith. The event was emceed by retired Detroit News baseball writer and dinner founder Lynn Henning. Let's take a look at the 2025 Detroit Baseball Dinner.
Anyway, Mike is still as plugged in to the Tigers and baseball as he ever was during his director of operations days, but he's got enormous insight on the Scott Harris era, on how this roster that Tyler's part of has been built, is being built, and what's ahead, and you can prepare for a lot of Alex Bregman talk here in a second. Come on, Mike.
That's a lot of pressure. I do not know why anybody would want to quote me, but Tony Paul, this is off the record, just in case. I also hate to open as the bearer of bad news, but unfortunately, although Lynn is right that I thought of Tyler as the 10th man, I'm now recanting and saying the 10th man is a sham. Why we selected somebody who by all measures was somewhere between the second and fourth best pitcher on the whole club, I'm now wondering. The only list of people who are better by one measure is Tarek Skubal. Tyler's number 2. By another list, it's just Tarek, Flaherty, and Olsen. So what were we thinking? This guy got 15th in the MVP. Why is he sitting here as 10th man? What were we thinking? I'm sorry. Obviously, I jest. He won that prestigious award. We should have given him an award for the best mullet as well, but we didn't. Great mullet during the year. I did a little digging. I was really curious. I'm going to put Tyler on the spot. You threw 94 1/3 innings. Very impressive. But you also did it without ever throwing a 4-inning outing. So when was the last year that a Tiger had a guy who did at least what you just did? Take a guess. I know you probably have no idea, but 80s? That's really good. I'll start with, I did a lot of digging on this, and I don't even know how to say this guy's last name, but you guys will jump in since you're natives. 1995 wasn't the answer, but Joe Baver, is that how you say his name? Beaver? Joe Baver threw 98 2/3 innings, but he had one outing of 4 innings pitched. In 1991, Paul Gibson threw 96 innings. He had 2 outings of 4 innings pitched. So the last time somebody did what Tyler did was 35 years ago in 1990. Somebody threw exactly 94 1/3 innings and also had no 4-inning outings. He did have 22 saves, though. His name was Mike Henneman. Tyler, though, to his credit, 8 saves, 14 holds. He's essentially in the same kind of leverage situation. So appreciate it. I can't say enough about Tyler. Not only does he throw 23 different pitches, which I can't imagine, but I did a little stalking of him. He says he's not a stat guy. That's what he told me before this, but he is really cutting edge on a lot of the things that I think baseball players are spending time on. Tyler has clearly spent a lot of time on the mental side of the game. It is really hard with 3 decks full to remember you just gave up that solo home run. How do you reset and immediately go after the next batter? And I've heard you time and again say that you've worked really hard on exactly that mental approach to the game. Throw strikes, don't beat yourself, and go out there and get it done. So congrats again. I am feeling a lot of pressure, though, because instead of an actual front office member, you guys are stuck with somebody who's been out of the game for 10 years, 2015. You were right the first time, Lynn. And Dave Chilton has been admirably a keynote here for year after year, and he couldn't make it this year. And so I looked at my favorite speeches, because I've been here since I was on the job for 5 days when they had this first dinner in 2002. And I came, and Dave Chilton got up, and he pointed out everyday fallacies that we all make, and he applied it to baseball. And I was like, wow, that is really great. So I can't do that. What can I bring? Well, I can bring 15 years of front office experience and strategy and team building. And I'm going to go through the roster construction, but I'm going to take a lot of tangents and give you a lot of bigger picture anecdotes. And if you get bored, just wave your hands and I'll stop wherever I am. Another thing Dave did was make a lot of fun of me every year for whatever date I brought that year. And then I finally started bringing my wife several years in a row. This year, sorry, Nick, you're a downgrade, but I brought my child's godfather with me instead. My wife's home, sadly sick with my almost 8-year-old. I will not talk about player mechanics, hit swing breakdown or pitching breakdown. If you have questions for that, Tyler and Dan can answer those later. I'm going to stick to my wheelhouse, which is really like roster construction, strategy, analytics, and kind of a lot of the like risk mitigation and game theory stuff. And I do want to set the stage before we jump into the roster and some big picture concepts that will frame everything else I say, but are kind of these kind of fallacies and misconceptions that I think Dave Chilton brings generally, I want to bring to baseball. One common theme is WAR, wins above replacement. And this is a very simple concept. How do you distill every player, and this is overly simplified, but how do you distill every player down to a single number that measures their value over a player you find, let's call them essentially free on a AAA roster? And a guy on a AAA roster should put up a 0 WAR season. A regular, a guy who plays every day, or your starter who throws 160 innings and has a 4-something ERA, they're going to give you a 2-win season, 2 WAR. An all-star is going to be a 4-win season. So when a guy like Tarek Skubal puts up a 6-win season, that is unbelievably good. When a guy like Tyler Holton, by some measures, puts up a 2.4 WAR season on Baseball Reference, your brain should explode, because relievers don't do that, usually. You do. So WAR is really important. That's one way. A team that's all replacement level players should win about 47 games. So the 2003 Tigers that I was on and the 2024 White Sox, winning fewer games than that is almost impossible. And really, I should take a lot of pride in being on that 2003 Tigers. We did something. That being said, just as an aside, because I love tangents, that was not my most disappointing year. My most disappointing year with the Tigers was 2008. We had just gotten Miguel Cabrera, everybody was picking us, and we went out and won 74 games. And 2003, we knew we were going to be bad, and we were really bad instead of bad, but it wasn't a shock to anybody. 2008, we thought we were going to be good, and we were bad, and that is embarrassing. And that is a far greater weight on my shoulders for my career than the 03 season. But thank you, 24 White Sox. Next, another concept, and this is really going to matter when I get to the Alex Bregman section, is the concept of marginal wins. It's not just how many wins, that WAR stat I talked about, it's how many wins above what you already have. So let's say you go out and trade for Kyle Tucker and plan to put him in left field. That's not worth that much to the Detroit Tigers because they already have Riley Green there. So when you're thinking about how do you get your team better, you really want to look at those spots where you're basically getting no performance at a position and you're upgrading to 2 wins. You're finding a regular. It costs the least in trade, it costs the least in development, it costs the least in free agency cost. It's far easier to go from 0 to 2 wins than from 2 to 4 wins. And that'll come back to Bregman, I'll bring that up again. But that is important, and it's a real opportunity for the Tigers. One of the issues with the 06 Tigers that I was on when we made the World Series, our roster was almost all 2-win players. It is really hard, we have a club of all regulars and no all-stars, to get better because you're stuck at that 2-win level. It's really hard to find a bunch of guys to go from 2 wins to 4. Last year's Tigers had a bunch of all-stars and several positions that are at 0. So that really is an opportunity. One of the other things, and this will also be with Bregman, but a couple other guys, you'll hear a lot of front office talk. Tony Paul quotes them all the time. Lynn quotes them. They're going to say what they have to say. The players speak. I mean, not to accuse Tyler of anything, but it's very much the Nuke LaLoosh, just taking it one day at a time. We all say the things that we don't want to offend anybody, but always judge the front office by what they do, not what they say. They speak with their actions. And you'll see as we go through, there's going to be examples of how this front office tells you exactly how they feel by the things that they do and the things that they don't do, not just the things they say. Small example, and they might talk up a guy like Eliezer Alfonso, a AA catcher. switch hitter, he's a catcher, he's doing really good in winter ball. They didn't protect him, and no other club took him. That tells you that despite the fact that they say, we believe he can catch and we believe he's getting better, his defense is bad. No club thinks his defense is good enough to pick him as a Rule 5 pick. All right, before I jump in, I'm going to pause, and we're going to play a fun game. The Scott Harris regime, and I'm going to include AJ on this, loves to throw out buzzwords, and I'll give you one example. I hear the word optionality all the time, and I have a bunch of other buzzwords here that I'll say if you guys don't first, but I would like to hear what are the buzzwords you've noticed Scott Harris and company or AJ like to say? Raise your hand, yell it out, whatever. Tyler, you got one? It's off the record. All right, I'll give you another one. They like to say the word traits. They like to say the word pitch design. They like to say they want to stack their improvements or stack their wins. Stacking is a big thing with them. They like to talk about profiles. I'm just poking fun. I thought we'd have a fun game, but that one flops. We'll move on. All right, digging into the team. I do think it's fair to point out where the club was. This club had 15 pitchers and hitters, who had at least one win above replacement last year. And I want to point out that we throw a lot of slings and arrows and stones at Al Avila's regime, but 2/3 of those 15 players were players acquired by Al. 6 of the hitters out of 9, 4 of the pitchers out of 6. I only point this out to say, he wasn't as bad as we thought, and I love Al. I still text him all the time. I have my own critiques of Al. I actually thought he should have done a lot more trading. And obviously, I think the biggest thing he would love a do-over on is the Javi Baez contract. Again, make a point of Javi Baez because that's an Alex Bregman potential parallel in some ways. Scott Harris, though, on the field, I'm essentially a fan of almost everything Scott Harris did. The biggest critiques I think he did were understandable in year one when he didn't understand his roster very well. He non-tendered Jeimer Candelario. He non-tendered All-Star Willie Castro. Those are defensible, though, because he made up with a waiver claim of a little-known lefty from Arizona who just won the 10th Man Award, clearly one of the best moves of his regime. He has really leaned heavily into technology. The things I poke fun at the words pitch design, but what they've gone in and taught these pitchers to do. Tyler was talking about the things that when he got here, he started learning that he hadn't done with Arizona before. It's like they are doing great things. They just installed a cage under the clubhouse where hitters can actually pretend to take pitches off the pitcher that they want to see, and the machine will mimic the pitches those pitchers throw. They're really investing a lot in technology. Nutrition programs up and down the minor leagues, bigger staffs than ever up and down the minor leagues. You are now seeing that show up in the way that players are advancing in player development and the way that they're getting better fast. I do want to touch on a couple of topics, big picture. Pitching chaos. The pitching chaos from last year was really fascinating, not just because it worked, and you need guys like Tyler to take the ball to make that work, but what it did. So what they did was take. They have a bulk guy, Brant Herter, Ty Madden, introducing young guys who can throw 3 or 4 innings. They want to bring them into the game at the exact right time so that the first 3 hitters they're facing give them the best odds to succeed. So what they do is they say, all right, well, they're going to start the game. We're going to do Ty Madden as the bulk guy. Well, this game's going to start with 4 lefties out of 5. That's a good game for Tyler to come in. So Tyler will open. He'll get his 1 2/3 innings, get through that pocket of guys, and then they'll switch to Ty Madden. He'll get 3 or 4 innings. What this also does, statistically, almost every starter, their third time through the order, so 3 times through the lineup, their third time through the lineup, they'll really start struggling, almost universally. And what it lets these guys do is get into the game a little later and get through 2 times through the order, so they don't have to face that heart of the order of third times. If you think about it, you open the game 2 times through the order, your third time through the order is right there, that first, second, third, fourth, fifth hitters in the lineup, the best hitters in the lineup. Well, now by pushing those guys back, if they want to try to stretch those guys to their third time through the order, the first guys they're facing, they're the 7th hitters, the 8th hitters, the 9th hitters. You might be able to squeeze a couple extra batters out of those middle inning bulk guys. So really fascinating. You could even make the argument, they will never do this, that even Tarek Skubal should be have an opener for him, and then he'll come in at a pocket that makes the most sense. You'll never see that happen. I don't think AJ would ever let himself go on record as saying that's smart, but I do think it would be clever. Another thing that Scott Harris brought to the regime, and AJ has really been doing a lot of this, is big picture lineup construction. You'll often see AJ, especially with so many lefties, construct a lineup that goes lefty, lefty, righty, lefty, lefty, righty, lefty, lefty, righty. And what that does is when a reliever comes into the game, the reliever's stuck in for 3 batters. They changed the rule, and that it's really based on that rule. Let's say they bring in a lefty to face Riley Green, and then they have another left. Green's a lefty, Carpenter's a lefty, Torkelson's a righty. Well, they bring in a lefty to face Green. AJ will probably leave him in, but then AJ gets to make a decision. Does he want to have 2 right-handers in a row versus this left-hander to get the platoon advantage? So this kind of lineup construction really allows the AJ to maximize his matchups, and you see that over and over. Jose Espada, after Houston lost, Jose Espada called out that the way AJ constructed the roster was really challenging for him to navigate. I'm pretty sure that the way the Seattle Mariners got beat 2 out of 3 and their manager got fired, it was right after the Tigers came to town, and AJ just kind of embarrassed him in terms of out-managing him using these kinds of strategies. Farm system. This farm system is better than I've ever seen. I joined the club in 2002. This farm system's the best that it's ever been. That's a great place to be when you have a major league club that wins 86 games and makes the playoffs. All of a sudden, you're good at the major league level, you have roster flexibility, you have payroll flexibility, and your farm system is one of the top 5 in baseball. This is really set up to be a dynasty, and I think it might be one of the reasons that I think Alex Bregman, they're being very hesitant in the bets they make now, because this is really set up for long-term success. And making a big mistake now with another Javi Baez-type contract really could weigh them down for years to come. Finally, I do think there's payroll constraints we're not seeing, but again, judging a team by its actions, not by what it says. They're not as active signing free agents as I would have expected. Also remember that the Bally Sports bankruptcy, a lot of teams had to renegotiate their deals. We don't know what happened, but to me it looks like their TV deal is lower than we probably thought it was. So that's probably going to show up in their payroll in some way. All right, finally, let's jump into the roster. No, I lied. I'm going to talk about one more big context thing. I think a lot of us fell into the routine of being frustrated by the Tigers' 2024 offense and saying, this team just doesn't score that many runs. Well, guess what? They scored 8. They were 8th in the league out of 14, essentially halfway. And it's mind-boggling to think, because they scored almost exactly the same number of runs as the year before in 2023 when they were 12th out of 14. So always keep in mind league context matters. Tigers essentially held serve last year in their offense while the rest of the league plummeted. So the Tigers are a much better offensive team than we give them credit for, and we got to keep that league context in kind of our vision. All right. We're going to jump into the position players, then the starters, then the relievers. Position players. Raise your hand, not the individual player, but what position was the worst position on the Tigers this year? Let me know. Worst position on the Tigers. Somebody said first. That's not right. But shortstop. That was a gimme. First base, though, was number 3, essentially tied with DH. So when you talk about what are the positions that are most easy to upgrade, there's 2 tiers for the Tigers. There's the tier of shortstop, DH, first base, and I'll include third base, but I think I'll talk about that. That tier essentially scored as positions was worth just 0 to 1 wins all year, versus left field, center field, second base, right field, and catcher were 2.7 wins or higher. Catcher, because of its defense, was actually the most valuable at 4.1. So when you look at where this club can upgrade, shortstop, DH, first base, and third base, that's going to frame the whole offseason. Jumping right in, We'll talk about shortstop in a second, but first base. I apologize to you guys in the Torkelson jerseys on the sound, but I'm not going to say Torkelson may be a wonderful human, but if the club had done nothing and just said we're going to have hope and faith that he's going to be the starter for 2025, it would have been the biggest indictment of the front office I could have seen. They made the move I would have made, which is like, don't give up on Torkelson, but for 2025 at least, you need to hedge your bets. They need to sign Gleyber Torres at second, which moves Keith to first. I don't know what's going to happen to Torkelson, and if I were in charge, I probably would option him to AAA, see if he fixed his swing, and can have the breakout we all expect. I know there were rumors of a trade of him to the Mets. I would not expect that because the Mets are going to offer 10 cents in the dollar. To the Tigers, unless they get a certain amount of value, they're better off holding Torkelson to see if they can still unlock the guy we all hope he can be. But hope doesn't win pennants. Hope doesn't get you to the playoffs. And the best thing they could have done is find a way to upgrade that position. Second base, I don't really have much to say about Torres. I think it was a great signing. It's a one-year signing. Their deepest position in the minor leagues is second base. They have Hao-Yu Lee, who will be at AAA. They have Kevin McGonigal, who's going to be at high A and probably AA very fast. They got guys behind them. They have Keith, who played very well there, and they're only moving him off just because I think it was a smart move to get Torres. The upgrade of Torres plus Keith is a lot more than Keith and Torkelson. My biggest concern for the club is not third base at this point. It's actually shortstop. And I say that being a huge fan of Trey Sweeney. In fact, I saw Jack Flaherty say some quotes to the effect of, if I was on that club, I think we would have gone further in the playoffs. I think if that Jack Flaherty trade hadn't happened, they don't make the playoffs. And not because Jack Flaherty wasn't a good pitcher the rest of the way, but because, again, that marginal improvement to the club, they were so good pitching-wise from July 31st to the end of the year that had they kept Jack Flaherty, maybe they would have been a little bit better. But the value of Trey Sweeney was an enormous upgrade over what they were getting for Javi Baez at the time. But for Trey Sweeney, they would have been, well, let's say they were one win short. Well, they're one win short. They don't make the playoffs. That's how close it was. I am concerned that we don't know enough about Trey Sweeney. There are some questions. And the downside risk, the upside is Trey Sweeney hits, they're in good shape. They have their shortstop for the next few years till the shortstop of the future arrives, who I'm not sure who it is. I hope it's Bryce Rayner or Jose Dixon or somebody, but it could be 50-50. The shortstop of the future for the Tigers is not yet in this organization. They need to protect themselves on the downside. If Trey Sweeney has the negative side of his outcomes, what are they left with? Nothing right now. Absolutely nothing. They're going to get a 0 WAR season from that position, maybe even negative WAR, like if it was just Javi Baez. So that leads me to my third base point, because these two are tied together. Alex Bregman, best case scenario, upgrades them from, let's call Vierling and Jace Young, a 2-win player, which I think is very reasonable, because Matt Vierling was 1.3 WAR there and just 180 plate appearances or whatever it was. They absolutely project as essentially an average player together. So you're signing Alex Bregman for the potential to be 2 wins better. And to sign Alex Bregman, if you're the Detroit Tigers, you probably have to go 6 or 7 years. Because every single tiebreaker in baseball goes against the Tigers. If Bregman is willing to sign a short-term deal, why would he ever come here over the Boston Red Sox? Fenway Park is made for his swing. Comerica Park is made to make his stats look really bad so that if he's a free agent again in 2 or 3 years, he might leave a lot of money on the table. It's to his best interest to go out, have another year or 2 or 3, crushing the Green Monster, coming out with good stats, and then getting another 2, 3, 4, 5-year deal. For those reasons, I think the market makes it very unlikely Bregman will sign here. Also remember, the front office tells you what they think by what they've done. They've had all winter long to give him a 6-year deal, and they haven't done it. They have learned the lesson of what the Tigers are dealing with Javi Baez. They may get 1 or 2 or 3 good years of Alex Bregman, but they're looking at this club that won 86 games and this club that has a great farm system. and don't want that millstone as they continue to churn through what I think we're looking at as another potential dynasty. So for all those reasons, not only do I think they won't sign Bregman, I agree with them. The position, the guy who makes the most sense to me, but for his injury, is a guy named Ha-Sung Kim, shortstop or Korean shortstop from the Padres. He could play third base, shortstop, and second base. And what a guy like that does, third base is a 2-win position. Shortstop was a 0-win position last year. And if Gleyber Torres gets hurt, they don't have a second base backup. This guy mitigates risk at 3 different positions. If they have an injury at any one of them, they can still get an average player just with one guy. Versus if they sign Bregman and Bregman gets hurt, or they sign Bregman and Sweeney gets hurt, well, they don't have a shortstop at all. So sadly, if you guys, I've heard lots of Bregman questions. I don't think they're going to sign him, and I wouldn't sign him either. Moving on to outfield, I actually don't have much to say. The outfield is really good, and I think it's going to continue to be good. We are lucky to watch a guy like Parker Meadows. I never got to watch a center fielder like that in the 15 years I was with the clubs I was at. He is just unbelievable. I'm sure the club, the pitchers, probably are really happy to have him back there. He does some amazing things. I haven't seen it in many years. I'm just happy for the guy. He seems like a good dude who just has managed to get better. Like, that's one way I want to give a huge feather in the cap to this club, this Scott Harris regime. Meadows was stuck in a rut in high A for like the second year, and he was doing nothing. And he went out and made some swing changes, most credit to him, but you also got to get credit to whoever he's working with in the offseason and credit to the club. So they all worked together and turned him into what I think is going to be a perennial all-star. Like, center field position, he just has to hit 250 with 15 homers. With his defense, he's a 4-win player. He's one of the best guys on the team. That's how special Parker Meadows is. Also, their best position player in the minors, Max Clark, is out in center field as well. And all of a sudden, you have Max Clark, you have Riley Green, who honestly was robbed as a Gold Glove left fielder. He was amazing and got no credit for it. And you might have Clark in right field. And you've seen this around baseball a lot. Baseball clubs are moving to playing elite outfield defense, 3 center fielders, because catching fly balls at a high rate and removing those extra base hits is one of the best ways to win. And we're seeing a lot of that. Finally, I want to call out a little bit the pinch hitting situation. And obviously, we all had Andy Ibanez to enjoy all year, who basically pretended to be Barry Bonds for 3 months. And one of the things this club does, it's not just platoon matchup. It's not just Andy Ibanez versus the lefty. It's the way that, and I can tell you, we did not do this. Andy Ibanez versus Josh Hader in the Houston series. You're talking about a fastball that comes in at a flat plane, not one that sinks a lot, and a batter swing that stays on a flat plane. Andy Ibanez had maximum chances to succeed in that situation, and he did, much to all of our happiness. And this is something the club looks at. It's not just, are you a pinch hitter, lefty versus righty? It's what does your swing look like? What do this pitcher's pitches look like? And that's why we're seeing like just really, really amazing thinking on this front that I'm very impressed with. Moving on to the starters, we were really lucky to watch Tarek Skubal. I grew up a Red Sox fan, and I was the assistant scouting director when we drafted Justin Verlander, and he was my guy all the way through. I never felt watching Justin Verlander like I felt watching Tarek Skubal last year. Last time I felt watching that was 1999 Pedro Martinez. So we were incredibly, incredibly lucky, and I don't want us to take for granted what a rare and special season we just saw. That guy was amazing. And I don't really have much else to say except that. I better answer more questions from Steve Clairfelt. He's been peppering me with them. He talked to me for 3 minutes on the phone this week, and he managed to fit in both an Alex Bregman question and a Justin Verlander question. So I will mention to Justin why Alex Cobb versus Justin Verlander. The short answer is I have no idea. The longer answer is I have a bunch of reasons it could have been, and I'll present those. One was already covered well by Cody Stavenhagen of The Athletic. Cody pointed out, this is a really young clubhouse that has grown with this organic chemistry. of them all coming up together and succeeding together. And it's really been special, especially the year after Miggy left. There was a big void in the way kind of things happen in the clubhouse. And I'm just speculating. Tyler could plead the fifth or tell me I'm an idiot, but this is my opinion. Bringing in a guy like Justin Verlander, he is a force unto himself. And you're changing the clubhouse entirely because it goes from a we team situation to even if he's not me, the media is going to surround him in that way through no fault of his own. He's an inner circle Hall of Famer. That's one reason. Number two, we don't know what the Tigers know. They might have seen something under the hood in his advanced metrics they don't like. I'll posit that was possible. Number three, this is the one I actually think is quite possible. When they signed Cobb for $15 million, we don't know if Justin Verlander was out there asking for $25 or $30 million. And they were like, we can't afford that. So they turned the page, and then a month and a half later, his price came down. And then finally, the one that nobody's talked about, despite what's been said publicly, maybe Justin didn't want to come here. It's not easy pitching in Detroit. It's a lot of pressure on him. The weather's not great. He has a home in Houston. His family is on the West Coast. I know with Kate Upton being so much in LA, there's a lot of reasons that other areas, San Francisco's pretty close, make a lot more sense for him. That being said, with the starters, aside from Ha-Sung Kim, I actually think their best upgrade would be re-signing Jack Flaherty. I don't know if that'll happen. I don't know if they have the money to make that happen. But typically you need 10 or 11 guys in a year to take the ball. Right now they have Skubal, Olsen, Cobb, and Job, who I'll talk about in a second, as the four likely starters. The fifth starter, they have Mize, Manning, Maeda, Montero, Herter, Madden, Gibson, Long. Those are all guys that are somewhere in that 0 to 2 win range. And getting a guy like Flaherty, who is 3 to 4 wins, that's a huge marginal upgrade. Flaherty's not upgrading the number 2 spot over Olsen. Flaherty's upgrading the number 5 slot over the guy pushed out of the rotation. So for me, Jack Flaherty actually probably could be one of the most impactful signings the rest of the way. Does it happen? Who knows? What else on the starters? Oh, Job. I do want to talk about Job, and I want to talk about the front office and showing us what they think. A year and a half ago, the end of the 2023 season, the club wasn't that good, and they chose not to call up Colt Keith or Justin Henry Malloy. And they were protecting their roster spots. And what we saw last year was the same thing could have happened with Jace Young, with Ty Madden, with Jackson Jobe. Instead, in a playoff run, this club prioritized winning over roster shenanigans, and that's really important. Secondly, what I like about baseball is there's now something called the Prospect Promotion Incentive, the PPI. And it basically says if you carry a guy who's a top 100 prospect in 2 of the 3 lists that come out every year, and he finishes top 3 in the Rookie of the Year, we're going to give you an extra draft pick. And you've immediately seen clubs respond to that. So what happens now, instead of you keeping a guy down for 3 weeks and he magically is ready for the big leagues and you bought a year of free agency, you see those guys start in the majors, try to get those prospects, and then if the guy's not successful, you see him optioned exactly 21 days, which has happened several times, and that's the amount of time you need to buy that year of free agency in the middle. So what that means is, there's a lot of reasons Jackson Jobe is likely to be in the rotation, but the fact that he's on these prospect lists and can get these draft picks is another reason that Jackson Jobe's likely to be a starter in the rotation. On the flip side, 2 of the lists just came out in the last several days, the Baseball America list and the MLB list. Jace Young fell off both of them. So Jace Young may or may not, depending on who they sign, make the roster, but all of a sudden the Tigers are incentivized to option him and get that year of free agency because he's not on those lists anymore. He can't get a prospect. So when you add up all the different factors, if there's a tiebreaker, that tiebreaker could mean Jace Young goes to AAA. Relievers. We got a great one here. Maybe he should do this section. But what we're seeing with the club, and it's a real adjustment around the game, and this club gets a lot of accolades even in Major League Baseball for what they do this way, is that every pitcher, especially both starters and relievers, are equipped with pitches that maximize the platoon split. So that means, just speaking of the fastball, if you have a sinker, well, the sinker you usually want to throw to the same side pitcher or same side hitter. And if it's an opposite side hitter, you almost exclusively want to throw four-seam fastballs. And you'll see most pitchers have one profile that they throw to lefties and almost an entirely different profile that they throw to righties. And actually, I'd love to hear during the Q&A, Tyler, how you break down your pitches, lefties and righties, and if you like scrap pitches versus one side or the other. You're kind of unique. It seems like you throw mostly everything to everybody. Okay. He's giving me the, you don't know what you're talking about look. I think one of the frustrations about the bullpen, and I see all of a sudden the last week, Tigers are going to sign this guy. They're going to trade for Ryan Presley. Spending a lot of money on a bullpen for the elite guys is a luxury. And with a club that it seems to me seems to have limited payroll flexibility, that's not a good use of their money. If the Tigers had money burning a hole in their pocket like the Dodgers do, they could go out and sign Tanner Scott and then turn around and sign Kirby Yates just because they have so much money it doesn't matter. But the Tigers have to be very judicious. And for them, they have to measure what's the value of upgrading from their existing club and their existing bullpen to Kirby Yates, when that might mean they can't sign a Jack Flaherty or a Ha-Sung Kim or even an Alex Bregman if that were to happen. And if it's an either-or choice, I think they're more likely to take the bigger marginal wins. There's that word again. So what you're going to see is them to cobble together a club bullpen like they've been doing. And just as an example, 2024, 25 pitchers took the ball. Of them, 4 were waiver claims, led by Tyler, or essentially waiver claims, guys who were designated for assignment, and 2 more were minor league free agents, Brendan Hanafy and Brian Sammons. And they all have really interesting traits, and they really look to those traits. Hanafy has that crazy turbo sinker. Gunther is that, also lefty sinker, sidearm look. These guys are doing a lot of different things. So you look at their activity this year. Jordan Balazovic, guy they're getting coming back from Korea, former top 100 prospect. Dietrich Enns, left-handed reliever, back from Japan. Matt Gage, left-handed reliever. One of the things I'll give this club credit for, Matt Gage was I'll be careful, was a minor league signing with a non-roster invitation. They met Matt Gage with 3 different coaches from their organization to sell him on how they would improve him. Wow. That is a lot of resources and time and energy dedicated to make a sales pitch. We never did that. I am blown away and very, very impressed, and I want to call that out. The club also, they're clearly trying to clone Tyler Holton because they had Bailey Horn for a minute as well, another lefty, and it seems like all they want is Tyler Holton 2, Tyler Holton 3, Tyler Holton 4, so that's what they're going for. But this is a long way of saying that we're going to see a lot of guys run through the bullpen, and if you look at, again, their actions, the only guys they protected this offseason when they had to protect guys from the Rule 5 draft were relievers. Chase Lee, Tyler Owens, Tyler Madison. Those are names we're going to see up here. Those are the guys that are the easiest carries. This club got very lucky when Will Vest was Rule 5 picked by the Mariners, had a rough couple months, got returned to the Tigers, and 2 months later his velocity was back up to 96, 97, and he was the second best reliever on the club by a lot of measures behind Tyler Holton. And then finally, keep in mind what this club's trying to do. This club's trying to win the AL Central, and that means they need to win about 88 or 89 games. So if you're the Dodgers or the Mets or the Yankees or one of these others, you have to pay the $500 million to get the Juan Sotos to maximize that 5, 6, 7 wins in a roster spot. If you're the Tigers, you have the luxury of looking at those 4 positions where you got 0 WAR and trying to wins above replacement and bringing them all to 2 wins above replacement. Tigers have a wonderful opportunity this year. I'm really excited about the club. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I do think they're not done this year. I expect to actually see 2 more free agent signings. I have no idea who they are. If I was in charge and it was my checkbook, it would be Ha-Sung Kim and Jack Flaherty, but they're smarter than me. Finally, I do want to close with a thank you. And this This dinner, I came the very first year it's happened. I think I've only missed 3. I love this night. It's a lot of fun. It's passion. We've all been starved for baseball for so long. And just as importantly, it's important for when I used to work in baseball and everybody here, but for the fans, I could not have had a 15-year career in baseball. But for the fans, Tyler could not be making a very good living doing a kids game. But for the fans, Lynn Henning and Dan Petry could not have put exactly 100 years of work into this industry. If I did my math right, Lynn 74 and Dan 76. 100 years of professional baseball, professional sports between the two of you. But for the fans, we would not be able to do this for a living. So thank you. I can't say enough thank yous, and I appreciate you listening.